Sollozzo began speaking to Michael in rapid Sicilian.
You must understand that what happened between me and your father was strictly a business matter. I have a great respect for Don Corleone and would beg for the opportunity to enter his service. But you must understand that your father is an old-fashioned man. He stands in the way of progress. The business I am in is the coming thing, the wave of the future. There are untold millions of dollars for everyone to make. But your father stands in the way because of certain unrealistic scruples. By doing this, he imposes his will on men like myself. Yes, I know. He says to me, "Go ahead, it's your business." But we both know that is unrealistic. We must tread on each other's corns. What he is really telling me is that I cannot operate my business. I am a man who respects himself and cannot let another man impose his will on me. So what had to happen, did happen. Let me say that I had the support, the silent support of all the New York families. And the Tattaglia family became my partners. If this quarrel continues, then the Corleone family will stand alone against everyone. Perhaps if your father were well, it could be done. But the eldest son is not the man the Godfather is, no disrespect intended. And the Irish consigliere, Hagen, is not the man Genco Abondando was, God rest his soul. So I propose a peace, a truce. Let us cease all hostilities until your father is well again and can take part in these bargainings. The Tattaglia family agrees upon my persuasions and my indemnities to forego justice for their son Bruno. We will have peace. Meanwhile, I have to make a living and will do a little trading in my business. I do not ask your cooperation, but I ask you, the Corleone family, not to interfere. These are my proposals. I assume you have the authority to agree, to make a deal.
Michael said in Sicilian,
"Tell me more about how you propose to start your business, exactly what part my family has to play in it, and what profit we can take from this business."
You want the whole proposition in detail, then?
Most important of all, I must have sure guarantees that no more attempts will be made on my father's life.
Sollozzo raised his hand expressively.
What guarantees can I give you? I'm the hunted one. I've missed my chance. You think too highly of me, my friend. I am not that clever.
Michael was sure now that the conference was only to gain a few days' time, that Sollozzo would make another attempt to kill the Don. What was beautiful was that the Turk was underrating him as a punk kid. Michael felt that strange, delicious chill filling his body. He made his face look distressed.
What is it?
The wine went right to my bladder. I've been holding it in. Is it all right if I go to the bathroom?
Sollozzo was searching his face intently with his dark eyes. He reached over and roughly thrust his hand in Michael's crotch, under it and around, searching for a weapon. Michael looked offended.
"I frisked him. I frisked thousands of young punks. He's clean."
Sollozzo didn't like it. For no reason at all, he didn't like it. He glanced at the man sitting at a table opposite them and raised his eyebrows toward the door of the bathroom. The man gave a slight nod that he had checked it, that there was nobody inside.
Don't take too long.
Sollozzo had marvelous antennae. He was nervous. Michael got up and went into the bathroom. The urinal had a pink bar of soap in it, secured by a wire net. He went into the booth. He really had to go. His bowels were loose. He did it very quickly, then reached behind the enamel water cabinet until his hand touched the small, blunt-nosed gun fastened with tape. He ripped the gun loose, remembering that Clemenza had said not to worry about leaving prints on the tape. He shoved the gun into his waistband and buttoned his jacket over it. He washed his hands and wet his hair. He wiped his prints off the faucet with his handkerchief. Then he left the toilet. Sollozzo was sitting directly facing the door of the toilet, his dark eyes blazing with alertness. Michael gave a smile. With a sigh of relief, he said,
"Now I can talk."
Captain McCluskey was eating the plate of veal and spaghetti that had arrived. The man on the far wall had been stiff with attention. Now he too relaxed visibly. Michael sat down again. He remembered Clemenza had told him not to do this, to come out of the toilet and blaze away. But either out of some warning instinct or sheer funk, he had not done so. He had felt that if he had made one swift move, he would have been cut down. Now he felt safe, and he must have been scared because he was glad he was no longer standing on his legs. They had gone weak with trembling. Sollozzo was leaning toward him. Michael, his belly covered by the table, unbuttoned his jacket and listened intently. He could not understand a word the man was saying. It was literally gibberish to him. His mind was so filled with pounding blood that no word registered. Underneath the table, his right hand moved to the gun tucked into his waistband, and he drew it free. At that moment, the waiter came to take their order, and Sollozzo turned his head to speak to the waiter. Michael thrust the table away from him with his left hand, and his right hand shoved the gun almost against Sollozzo's head. The man's coordination was so acute that he had already begun to fling himself away at Michael's motion. But Michael, younger, his reflexes sharper, pulled the trigger. The bullet caught Sollozzo squarely between his eye and his ear, and when it exited on the other side, blasted out a huge gout of blood and skull fragments onto the petrified waiter's jacket. Instinctively, Michael knew that one bullet was enough. Sollozzo had turned his head in that last moment, and he had seen the light of life die in the man's eyes as clearly as a candle goes out. Only 1 second had gone by as Michael pivoted to bring the gun to bear on McCluskey. The police captain was staring at Sollozzo with phlegmatic surprise, as if this had nothing to do with him. He did not seem to be aware of his own danger. His veal-covered fork was suspended in his hand, and his eyes were just turning on Michael. And the expression on his face, in his eyes, held such confident outrage, as if now he expected Michael to surrender or to run away, that Michael smiled at him as he pulled the trigger. This shot was bad, not mortal. It caught McCluskey in his thick, bull-like throat, and he started to choke loudly, as if he had swallowed too large a bite of the veal. Then the air seemed to fill with a fine mist of sprayed blood as he coughed it out of his shattered lungs. Very coolly, very deliberately, Michael fired the next shot through the top of his white-haired skull. The air seemed to be full of pink mist. Michael swung toward the man sitting against the wall. This man had not made a move. He seemed paralyzed. Now he carefully showed his hands on top of the table and looked away. The waiter was staggering back toward the kitchen, an expression of horror on his face, staring at Michael in disbelief. Sollozzo was still in his chair, the side of his body propped up by the table. McCluskey, his heavy body pulling downward, had fallen off his chair onto the floor. Michael let the gun slip out of his hand so that it bounced off his body and made no noise. He saw that neither the man against the wall nor the waiter had noticed him dropping the gun. He strode the few steps toward the door and opened it. Sollozzo's car was parked at the curb still, but there was no sign of the driver. Michael turned left and around the corner. Headlights flashed on, and a battered sedan pulled up to him, the door swinging open. He jumped in, and the car roared away. He saw that it was Tessio at the wheel, his trim features hard as marble.
How'd you do the job on Sollozzo?
For that moment, Michael was struck by the idiom Tessio had used. It was always used in a sexual sense. To do the job on a woman meant seducing her. It was curious that Tessio used it now.
Both of them.
Sure?
I saw their brains.
There was a change of clothes for Michael in the car. 20 minutes later, he was on an Italian freighter slated for Sicily. 2 hours later, the freighter put out to sea, and from his cabin, Michael could see the lights of New York City burning like the fires of hell. He felt an enormous sense of relief. He was out of it now. The feeling was familiar, and he remembered being taken off the beach of an island his Marine Division had invaded. The battle had been still going on, but he had received a slight wound and was being ferried back to a hospital ship. He had felt the same overpowering relief then that he felt now. All hell would break loose, but he wouldn't be there. On the day after the murder of Sollozzo and Captain McCluskey, the police captains and lieutenants in every station house in New York City sent out the word. There would be no more gambling, no more prostitution, no more deals of any kind until the murderer of Captain McCluskey was caught. Massive raids began all over the city. All unlawful business activities came to a standstill. Later that day, an emissary from the families asked the Corleone family if they were prepared to give up the murderer. They were told that the affair did not concern them. That night, a bomb exploded in the Corleone family mall in Long Beach, thrown from a car that pulled up to the chain, then roared away. That night also, 2 button men of the Corleone family were killed as they peacefully ate their dinner in a small Italian restaurant in Greenwich Village. The 5 Families' War of 1946 had begun. Book 2, Chapter 12. Johnny Fontaine waved a casual dismissal to the manservant.
See you in the morning, Billy.
The colored butler bowed his way out of the huge dining room, living room with its view of the Pacific Ocean. It was a friendly goodbye sort of bow, not a servant's bow, and given only because Johnny Fontaine had company for dinner. Johnny's company was a girl named Sharon Moore, a New York City Greenwich Village girl in Hollywood to try for a small part in a movie being produced by an old flame who had made the big time. She had visited the set while Johnny was acting in the Waltz movie. Johnny had found her young and fresh and charming and witty, and had asked her to come to his place for dinner this evening. His invitations to dinner were already famous and had the force of royalty, and of course, she said yes. Sharon Moore obviously expected him to come on very strong because of his reputation. But Johnny hated the Hollywood piece-of-meat approach. He never slept with any girl unless there was something about her he really liked, except, of course, sometimes when he was very drunk and found himself in bed with a girl he didn't even remember meeting or seeing before. And now that he was 35 years old, divorced once, estranged from his second wife, with maybe 1,000 pubic scalps dangling from his belt, he simply wasn't that eager. But there was something about Sharon Moore that aroused affection in him, and so he had invited her to dinner. He never ate much, but he knew young pretty girls ambitiously starved themselves for pretty clothes and were usually big eaters on a date, so there was plenty of food on the table. There was also plenty of liquor, champagne in a bucket, scotch, rye, brandy, and liqueurs on the sideboard. Johnny served the drinks and the plates of food already prepared. When they had finished eating, he led her into the huge living room with its glass wall that looked out onto the Pacific. He put a stack of Ella Fitzgerald records on the hi-fi and settled on the couch with Sharon. He made a little small talk with her, found out about what she had been like as a kid, whether she had been a tomboy or boy crazy, whether she had been homely or pretty, lonely or gay. He always found these details touching. It always evoked the tenderness he needed to make love. They nestled together on the sofa, very friendly, very comfortable. He kissed her on the lips, a cool, friendly kiss. And when she kept it that way, he left it that way. Outside the huge picture window, he could see the dark blue sheet of the Pacific lying flat beneath the moonlight. Sharon asked,
"How come you're not playing any of your records?"
Johnny smiled at her. He was amused by her teasing him.
I'm not that Hollywood.
"Play some for me. Or sing for me. You know, like the movies. I'll bubble up and melt all over you just like those girls do on the screen."
Johnny laughed outright. When he had been younger, he had done just such things, and the result had always been stagey. The girls trying to look sexy and melting, making their eyes swim with desire for an imagined fantasy camera. He would never dream of singing to a girl now. For one thing, he hadn't sung for months. He didn't trust his voice. For another thing, amateurs didn't realize how much professionals depended on technical help to sound as good as they did. He could have played his records, but he felt the same shyness about hearing his youthful, passionate voice as an aging, balding man running to fat feels about showing pictures of himself as a youth in the full bloom of manhood.
My voice is out of shape, and honestly, I'm sick of hearing myself sing.
They both sipped their drinks.
"I hear you're great in this picture. Is it true you did it for nothing?"
Just a token payment.
He got up to give her a refill on her brandy glass, gave her a gold monogrammed cigarette, and flashed his lighter out to hold the light for her. She puffed on the cigarette and sipped her drink, and he sat down beside her again. His glass had considerably more brandy in it than hers. He needed it to warm himself, to cheer himself, to charge himself up. His situation was the reverse of the lover's usual one. He had to get himself drunk instead of the girl. The girl was usually too willing, where he was not. The last 2 years had been hell on his ego, and he used this simple way to restore it, sleeping with a young, fresh girl for one night, taking her to dinner a few times, giving her an expensive present, and then brushing her off in the nicest way possible so that her feelings wouldn't be hurt. And then they could always say they had had a thing with the great Johnny Fontaine. It wasn't true love, but you couldn't knock it if the girl was beautiful and genuinely nice. He hated the hard, bitchy ones, the ones who screwed for him and then rushed off to tell their friends that they'd screwed the great Johnny Fontaine, always adding that they'd had better. What amazed him more than anything else in his career were the complacent husbands who almost told him to his face that they forgave their wives since it was allowed for even the most virtuous matron to be unfaithful with a great singing and movie star like Johnny Fontaine. That really floored him. He loved Ella Fitzgerald on records. He loved that kind of clean singing, that kind of clean phrasing. It was the only thing in life he really understood, and he knew he understood it better than anyone else on earth. Now, lying back on the couch, the brandy warming his throat, he felt a desire to sing. Not music, but to phrase with the records. Yet it was something impossible to do in front of a stranger. He put his free hand in Sharon's lap, sipping his drink from his other hand. Without any slyness, but with the sensualness of a child seeking warmth. His hand in her lap pulled up the silk of her dress to show milky white thigh above the sheer netted gold of her stockings. And, as always, despite all the women, all the years, all the familiarity, Johnny felt the fluid, sticky warmness flooding through his body at that sight. The miracle still happened. And what would he do when that failed him as his voice had? He was ready now. He put his drink down on the long inlaid cocktail table and turned his body toward her. He was very sure, very deliberate, and yet tender. There was nothing sly or lecherously lascivious in his caresses. He kissed her on the lips while his hands rose to her breasts. His hand fell to her warm thighs, the skin so silky to his touch. Her returning kiss was warm but not passionate, and he preferred it that way right now. He hated girls who turned on all of a sudden as if their bodies were motors galvanized into erotic pumpings by the touching of a hairy switch. Then he did something he always did, something that had never yet failed to arouse him. Delicately, and as lightly as it was possible to do so, and still feel something, he brushed the tip of his middle finger deep down between her thighs. Some girls never even felt that initial move toward lovemaking. Some were distracted by it, not sure it was a physical touch, because at the same time he always kissed them deeply on the mouth. Still others seemed to suck in his finger or gobble it up with a pelvic thrust. And of course, before he became famous, some girls had slapped his face. It was his whole technique, and usually it served him well enough. Sharon's reaction was unusual. She accepted it all, the touch, the kiss, then shifted her mouth off his, shifted her body ever so slightly back along the couch, and picked up her drink. It was a cool but definite refusal. It happened sometimes. Rarely, but it happened. Johnny picked up his drink and lit a cigarette. She was saying something very sweetly, very lightly.
It's not that I don't like you, Johnny. You're much nicer than I thought you'd be. And it's not because I'm not that kind of a girl. It's just that I have to be turned on to do it with a guy. You know what I mean?
Johnny Fontaine smiled at her. He still liked her.
And I don't turn you on?
She was a little embarrassed.
Well, you know, when you were so great singing and all, I was still a little kid. I sort of just missed you. I was the next generation. Honest, it's not that I'm goody-goody. If you were James Dean or somebody I grew up on, I'd have my panties off in a second.
He didn't like her quite so much now. She was sweet, she was witty, she was intelligent. She hadn't fallen all over herself to screw for him or try to hustle him because his connections would help her in showbiz. She was really a straight kid. But there was something else he recognized. It had happened a few times before. The girl who went on a date with her mind all made up not to go to bed with him, no matter how much she liked him, just so that she could tell her friends, and even more, herself, that she had turned down a chance to screw for the great Johnny Fontaine. It was something he understood now that he was older, and he wasn't angry. He just didn't like her quite that much, and he had really liked her a lot. And now that he didn't like her quite so much, he relaxed more. He sipped his drink and watched the Pacific Ocean.
I hope you're not sore, Johnny. I guess I'm being square. I guess in Hollywood a girl's supposed to put out just as casually as kissing a beau goodnight. I just haven't been around long enough.
Johnny smiled at her and patted her cheek. His hand fell down to pull her skirt discreetly over her rounded silken knees.
I'm not sore. It's nice having an old-fashioned date.
Not telling what he felt, the relief at not having to prove himself a great lover, not having to live up to his screened, godlike image, not having to listen to the girl trying to react as if he really had lived up to that image, making more out of a very simple, routine piece of ass than it really was. They had another drink, shared a few more cool kisses, and then she decided to go.
Can I call you for a dinner some night?
She played it frank and honest to the end.
I know you don't want to waste your time and then get disappointed. Thanks for a wonderful evening. Someday I'll tell my children I had supper with the great Johnny Fontaine, all alone in his apartment.
He smiled at her.
And that you didn't give in.
They both laughed.
They'll never believe that.
And then, Johnny, being a little phony in his turn, said,
I'll give it to you in writing. Want me to?
She shook her head. He continued on.
Anybody doubts you? Give me a buzz on the phone. I'll straighten them right out. I'll tell them how I chased you all around the apartment, but you kept your honor, okay?
He had finally been a little too cruel, and he felt stricken at the hurt on her young face. She understood that he was telling her that he hadn't tried too hard. He had taken the sweetness of her victory away from her. Now she would feel that it had been her lack of charm or attractiveness that had made her the victor this night. And, being the girl she was, when she told the story of how she resisted the great Johnny Fontaine, she would always have to add, with a wry little smile, "Of course, he didn't try very hard." So now, taking pity on her, he said,
If you ever feel real down, give me a ring, okay? I don't have to shack up every girl I know.
I will.
She went out the door. He was left with a long evening before him. He could have used what Jack Woltz called the meat factory, the stable of willing starlets, but he wanted human companionship. He wanted to talk like a human being. He thought of his first wife, Virginia. Now that the work on the picture was finished, he would have more time for the kids. He wanted to become part of their life again, and he worried about Virginia, too. She wasn't equipped to handle the Hollywood sharpies who might come after her just so that they could brag about having screwed Johnny Fontaine's first wife. As far as he knew, nobody could say that yet. Everybody could say it about his second wife, though, he thought wryly. He picked up the phone. He recognized her voice immediately, and that was not surprising. He had heard it the first time when he was 10 years old, and they had been in 4B together.
Hi, Ginny. You busy tonight? Can I come over for a little while?
All right. The kids are sleeping, though. I don't want to wake them up.
That's okay. I just wanted to talk to you.
Her voice hesitated slightly. Then, carefully controlled not to show any concern, she asked,
Is it anything serious? Anything important?
No. I finished the picture today, and I thought maybe I could just see you and talk to you. Maybe I could take a look at the kids if you're sure they won't wake up.
Okay. I'm glad you got that part you wanted.
Thanks. I'll see you in about a half hour.
When he got to what had been his home in Beverly Hills, Johnny Fontaine sat in the car for a moment, staring at the house. He remembered what his godfather had said, that he could make his own life what he wanted. Great chance if you knew what you wanted. But what did he want? His first wife was waiting for him at the door. She was pretty, petite and brunette, a nice Italian girl, the girl next door who would never fool around with another man, and that had been important to him. Did he still want her, he asked himself, and the answer was no. For one thing, he could no longer make love to her. Their affection had grown too old. And there were some things, nothing to do with sex, she could never forgive him. But they were no longer enemies. She made him coffee and served him homemade cookies in the living room.
Stretch out on the sofa. You look tired.
He took off his jacket and his shoes and loosened his tie while she sat in the chair opposite him with a grave little smile on her face.
It's funny.
What's funny?
He asked her, sipping coffee and spilling some of it on his shirt.
The great Johnny Fontaine, stuck without a date.
The great Johnny Fontaine is lucky if he can even get it up anymore.
It was unusual for him to be so direct.
Is there something really the matter?
Johnny grinned at her.
I had a date with a girl in my apartment, and she brushed me off. And you know, I was relieved.
To his surprise, he saw a look of anger pass over Ginny's face.
Don't worry about those little tramps. She must have thought that was the way to get you interested in her.
And Johnny realized with amusement that Ginny was actually angry with the girl who had turned him down.
Ah, what the hell. I'm tired of that stuff. I have to grow up sometime. Now that I can't sing anymore, I guess I'll have a tough time with dames. I never got in on my looks, you know.
You were always better looking than you photographed.
Johnny shook his head.
I'm getting fat and I'm getting bald. Hell, if this picture doesn't make me big again, I better learn how to bake pizzas. Or maybe we'll put you in the movies. You look great.
She looked 35. A good 35, but 35. And out here in Hollywood, that might as well be 100. The young, beautiful girls thronged through the city like lemmings, lasting 1 year, some 2, some of them so beautiful they could make a man's heart almost stop beating until they opened their mouths, until the greedy hopes for success clouded the loveliness of their eyes. Ordinary women could never hope to compete with them on a physical level. And you could talk all you wanted to about charm, about intelligence, about chic, about poise. The raw beauty of these girls overpowered everything else. Perhaps, if there were not so many of them, there might be a chance for an ordinary, nice-looking woman. And since Johnny Fontaine could have all of them, or nearly all of them, Jenny knew that he was saying all this just to flatter her. He had always been nice that way. He had always been polite to women, even at the height of his fame, paying them compliments, holding lights for their cigarettes, opening doors. And since all this was usually done for him, it made it even more impressive to the girls he went out with. And he did it with all girls, even the one-night stands, I-don't-know-your-name girls. She smiled at him, a friendly smile.
You already made me, Johnny. Remember? For 12 years. You don't have to give me your line.
He sighed and stretched out on the sofa.
No kidding, Ginny. You look good. I wish I looked that good.
She didn't answer him. She could see he was depressed.
Do you think the picture is okay? Will it do you some good?
Johnny nodded.
Yeah. It could bring me all the way back. If I get the academy thing and play my cards right, I can make it big again even without the singing. Then maybe I can give you and the kids more dough.
We have more than enough.
I want to see more of the kids, too. I want to settle down a little bit. Why can't I come every Friday night for dinner here? I swear I'll never miss one Friday. I don't care how far away I am or how busy I am. And then whenever I can, I'll spend weekends, or maybe the kids can spend some part of their vacations with me.
Jenny put an ashtray on his chest.
It's okay with me. I never got married because I wanted you to keep being their father.
She said this without any kind of emotion, but Johnny Fontaine, staring up at the ceiling, knew she said it as an atonement for those other things, the cruel things she had once said to him when their marriage had broken up, when his career had started going down the drain.
By the way, guess who called me?
Johnny wouldn't play that game. He never did.
Who?
You could take at least one lousy guess.
Johnny didn't answer.
Your godfather.
Johnny was really surprised.
He never talks to anybody on the phone. What did he say to you?
He told me to help you. He said you could be as big as you ever were, that you were on your way back, but that you needed people to believe in you. I asked him, why should I? And he said, because you're the father of my children. He's such a sweet old guy, and they tell such horrible stories about him.
Virginia hated phones, and she had had all the extensions taken out, except for the one in her bedroom and one in the kitchen. Now they could hear the kitchen phone ringing. She went to answer it. When she came back into the living room, there was a look of surprise on her face.
It's for you, Johnny. It's Tom Hagen. He says it's important.
Johnny went into the kitchen and picked up the phone.
Yeah, Tom.
Johnny, the Godfather wants me to come out and see you and set some things up that can help you out now that the picture's finished. He wants me to catch the morning plane. Can you meet it in Los Angeles? I have to fly back to New York the same night, so you won't have to worry about keeping your night free for me.
Sure, Tom. And don't worry about me losing a night. Stay over and relax a bit. I'll throw a party and you can meet some movie people.
He always made that offer. He didn't want the folks from his old neighborhood to think he was ashamed of them.
Thanks, but I really have to catch the early morning plane back. Okay, you'll meet the 11:30 a.m. out of New York?
Sure.
Stay in your car. Send one of your people to meet me when I get off the plane and bring me to you.
Right.
He went back to the living room, and Jenny looked at him inquiringly.
My godfather has some plans for me to help me out. He got me the part in the movie, I don't know how, but I wish he'd stay out of the rest of it.
He went back onto the sofa. He felt very tired.
Why don't you sleep in the guest bedroom tonight instead of going home? You can have breakfast with the kids and you won't have to drive home so late. I hate to think of you all alone in that house of yours anyway. Don't you get lonely?
I don't stay home much.
She laughed.
Then you haven't changed much.
She paused and then said,
Shall I fix up the other bedroom?
Why can't I sleep in your bedroom?
She flushed.
No.
She smiled at him, and he smiled back. They were still friends. When Johnny woke up the next morning, it was late. He could tell by the sun coming in through the drawn blinds. It never came in that way unless it was in the afternoon.
Hey, Ginny, do I still rate breakfast?
And far away, he heard her voice call,
Just a second.
And it was just a second. She must have had everything ready, hot in the oven, the tray waiting to be loaded, because as Johnny lit his first cigarette of the day, the door of the bedroom opened, and his two small daughters came in, wheeling the breakfast cart. They were so beautiful, it broke his heart. Their faces were shining and clear, their eyes alive with curiosity and the eager desire to run to him. They wore their hair braided old-fashioned in long pigtails, and they wore old-fashioned frocks and white patent leather shoes. They stood by the breakfast cart watching him as he stubbed out his cigarette and waited for him to call and hold his arms wide. Then they came running to him. He pressed his face between their two fresh, fragrant cheeks and scraped them with his beard so that they shrieked. Jenny appeared in the bedroom door and wheeled the breakfast cart the rest of the way so that he could eat in bed. She sat beside him on the edge of the bed, pouring his coffee, buttering his toast. The two young daughters sat on the bedroom couch watching him. They were too old now for pillow fights or to be tossed around. They were already smoothing their mussed hair. Oh, Christ, he thought, pretty soon they'll be all grown up. Hollywood punks will be out after them. He shared his toast and bacon with them as he ate, giving them sips of coffee. It was a habit left over from when he had been singing with the band, and rarely ate with him, so they liked to share his food when he had his odd-hour meals, like afternoon breakfasts or morning suppers. The change around in food delighted them, to eat steak and French fries at 7 in the morning, bacon and eggs in the afternoon. Only Jenny and a few of his close friends knew how much he idolized his daughters. That had been the worst thing about the divorce and leaving home. The one thing he had fought about and for was his position as a father to them. In a very sly way, he had made Ginny understand he would not be pleased by her remarrying, not because he was jealous of her, but because he was jealous of his position as a father. He had arranged the money to be paid to her so it would be enormously to her advantage financially not to remarry. It was understood that she could have lovers as long as they were not introduced into her home life. But on this score, he had absolute faith in her. She had always been amazingly shy and old-fashioned in sex. The Hollywood gigolos had batted 0 when they started swarming around her, sniffing for the financial settlement and the favors they could get from her famous husband. He had no fear that she expected a reconciliation because he had wanted to sleep with her the night before. Neither one of them wanted to renew their old marriage. She understood his hunger for beauty, his irresistible impulse toward young women, far more beautiful than she. It was known that he always slept with his movie co-stars, at least once. His boyish charm was irresistible to them, as their beauty was to him.
You'll have to start getting dressed pretty soon. Tom's plane will be getting in.
She shooed the daughters out of the room.
Yeah. By the way, Ginny, you know I'm getting divorced? I'm going to be a free man again.
She watched him getting dressed. He always kept fresh clothes at her house ever since they had come to their new arrangement after the wedding of Don Corleone's daughter.
Christmas is only 2 weeks away. Shall I plan on you being here?
It was the first time he had even thought about the holidays. When his voice was in shape, holidays were lucrative singing dates. But even then, Christmas was sacred. If he missed this one, it would be the second one. Last year, he had been courting his second wife in Spain, trying to get her to marry him.
Yeah. Christmas Eve and Christmas.
He didn't mention New Year's Eve. That would be one of the wild nights he needed every once in a while, to get drunk with his friends. And he didn't want a wife along then. He didn't feel guilty about it. She helped him put on his jacket and brushed it off. He was always fastidiously neat. She could see him frowning because the shirt he had put on was not laundered to his taste. The cufflinks, a pair he had not worn for some time, were a little too loud for the way he liked to dress now. She laughed softly.
Tom won't notice the difference.
The 3 women of the family walked him to the door and out on the driveway to his car. The 2 little girls held his hands, one on each side. His wife walked a little behind him. She was getting pleasure out of how happy he looked. When he reached his car, he turned around and swung each girl in turn high up in the air and kissed her on the way down. Then he kissed his wife and got into the car. He never liked drawn-out goodbyes. Arrangements had been made by his PR man and aide. At his house, a chauffeured car was waiting, a rented car. In it were the PR man and another member of his entourage. Johnny parked his car and hopped in, and they were on their way to the airport. He waited inside the car while the PR man went out to meet Tom Hagen's plane. When Tom got into the car, they shook hands and drove back to his house. Finally, he and Tom were alone in the living room. There was a coolness between them. Johnny had never forgiven Hagen for acting as a barrier to his getting in touch with the Don when the Don was angry with him, in those bad days before Connie's wedding. Hagen never made excuses for his actions. He could not. It was part of his job to act as a lightning rod for resentments which people were too awed to feel toward the Don himself, though he had earned them.
Your godfather sent me out here to give you a hand on some things. I wanted to get it out of the way before Christmas.
Johnny Fontaine shrugged.
The picture is finished. The director was a square guy and treated me right. My scenes are too important to be left on the cutting room floor just for Woltz to pay me off. He can't ruin a $10 million picture. So now everything depends on how good people think I am in the movie.
Is winning this Academy Award so terribly important to an actor's career? Or is it just the usual publicity crap that really doesn't mean anything one way or the other?
He paused.
Except, of course, the glory. Everybody likes glory.
Johnny Fontaine grinned at him.
Except my godfather, and you. No, Tom, it's not a lot of crap. An Academy Award can make an actor for 10 years. He can get his pick of roles. The public goes to see him. It's not everything, but for an actor, it's the most important thing in the business. I'm counting on winning it. Not because I'm such a great actor, but because I'm known primarily as a singer, and the part is foolproof. And I'm pretty good, too. No kidding.
Tom Hagen shrugged.
Your godfather tells me that the way things stand now, you don't have a chance of winning the award.
Johnny Fontaine was angry.
What the hell are you talking about? The picture hasn't even been cut yet, much less shown. And the Don isn't even in the movie business. Why the hell did you fly to 3,000 miles just to tell me that shit?
He was so shaken, he was almost in tears.
Johnny, I don't know a damn thing about all this movie stuff. Remember, I'm just a messenger boy for the Don. But we have discussed this whole business of yours many times. He worries about you, about your future. He feels you still need his help, and he wants to settle your problem once and for all. That's why I'm here now, to get things rolling. But you have to start growing up, Johnny. You have to stop thinking about yourself as a singer or an actor. You've got to start thinking about yourself as a prime mover, as a guy with muscle.
Johnny Fontaine laughed and filled his glass.
If I don't win that Oscar, I'll have as much muscle as one of my daughters. My voice is gone. If I had that back, I could make some moves. Oh, hell. How does my godfather know I won't win it? Okay, I believe he knows. He's never been wrong.
Hagen lit a thin cigar.
We got the word that Jack Waltz won't spend studio money to support your candidacy. In fact, he sent the word out to everybody who votes that he does not want you to win. But holding back the money for ads and all that may do it. He's also arranging to have one other guy get as much of the opposition votes as he can swing. He's using all sorts of bribes. Jobs, money, broads, everything. And he's trying to do it without hurting the picture, or hurting it as little as possible.
Johnny Fontaine shrugged. He filled his glass with whiskey and downed it.
Then I'm dead.
Hagen was watching him with his mouth curled up with distaste.
Drinking won't help your voice.
Fuck you.
Hagen's face suddenly became smoothly impassive. Then he said,
Okay, I'll keep this purely business.
Johnny Fontaine put his drink down and went over to stand in front of Hagen.
I'm sorry I said that, Tom. Christ, I'm sorry. I'm taking it out on you because I want to kill that bastard Jack Waltz, and I'm afraid to tell off my godfather. So I get sore at you.
There were tears in his eyes. He threw the empty whiskey glass against the wall, but so weakly that the heavy shot glass did not even shatter, and rolled along the floor back to him, so that he looked down at it in baffled fury. Then he laughed.
Jesus Christ.
He walked over to the other side of the room and sat opposite Hagen.
You know, I had everything my own way for a long time. Then I divorced Ginny, and everything started going sour. I lost my voice, my records stopped selling, I didn't get any more movie work. And then my godfather got sore at me and wouldn't talk to me on the phone or see me when I came into New York. You were always the guy barring the path, and I blamed you, but I knew you wouldn't do it without orders from the Don. But you can't get sore at him. It's like getting sore at God. So I curse you. But you've been right all along the line. And to show you I mean my apology, I'm taking your advice. No more booze until I get my voice back, okay?
The apology was sincere. Hagen forgot his anger. There must be something to this 35-year-old boy, or the Don would not be so fond of him.
Forget it, Johnny.
He was embarrassed at the depth of Johnny's feeling, and embarrassed by the suspicion that it might have been inspired by fear that he might turn the Don against him. And of course, the Don could never be turned by anyone for any reason. His affection was mutable only by himself.
Things aren't so bad. The Don says he can cancel out everything Waltz does against you, that you will almost certainly win the award. But he feels that won't solve your problem. He wants to know if you have the brains and balls to become a producer on your own, make your own movies from top to bottom.
How the hell is he going to get me the award?
How do you find it so easy to believe that Waltz can finagle it and your godfather can't? Now, since it's necessary to get your faith for the other part of our deal, I must tell you this, just keep it to yourself. Your godfather is a much more powerful man than Jack Waltz, and he is much more powerful in areas far more critical. How can he swing the award? He controls the people who control all the labor unions in the industry, all the people or nearly all the people who vote. Of course you have to be good, you have to be in contention on your own merits. And your godfather has more brains than Jack Waltz. He doesn't go up to these people and put a gun to their heads and say, vote for Johnny Fontaine or you are out of a job. He doesn't strong-arm where strong-arm doesn't work or leaves too many hard feelings. He'll make those people vote for you because they want to. But they won't want to unless he takes an interest. Now just take my word for it that he can get you the award. And that if he doesn't do it, you won't get it.
Okay, I believe you. And I have the balls and brains to be a producer, but I don't have the money. No bank would finance me. It takes millions to support a movie.
When you get the award, start making plans to produce 3 of your own movies. Hire the best people in the business, the best technicians, the best stars, whoever you need. Plan on 3 to 5 movies.
You're crazy. That many movies could mean $20 million.
When you need the money, get in touch with me. I'll give you the name of the bank out here in California to ask for financing. Don't worry, they finance movies all the time. Just ask them for the money in the ordinary way with the proper justifications like a regular business deal. They will approve. But first, you have to see me and tell me the figures and the plans, okay?
Johnny was silent for a long time.
Is there anything else?
Hagen smiled.
You mean, do you have to do any favors in return for a loan of $20 million? Sure you will.
He waited for Johnny to say something.
Nothing you wouldn't do anyway if the Don asked you to do it for him.
The Don has to ask me himself if it's something serious, you know what I mean? I won't take your word or Sonny's for it.
Hagen was surprised by this good sense. Fontaine had some brains after all. He had sense to know that the Don was too fond of him and too smart to ask him to do something foolishly dangerous, whereas Sonny might.
Let me reassure you on one thing. Your godfather has given me and Sonny strict instructions not to involve you in any way in anything that might get you bad publicity through our fault. And he will never do that himself. I guarantee you that any favor he asks of you, you will offer to do before he requests it, okay?
Johnny smiled.
Okay.
Also, he has faith in you. He thinks you have brains, and so he figures the bank will make money on the investment, which means he will make money on it. So it's really a business deal. Never forget that. Don't go screwing around with the money. You may be his favorite godson, but $20 million is a lot of dough. He has to stick his neck out to make sure you get it.
Tell him not to worry. If a guy like Jack Woltz can be a big movie genius, anybody can.
That's what your godfather figures. Can you have me driven back to the airport? I've said all I have to say. When you do start signing contracts for everything, hire your own lawyers. I won't be in on it. But I'd like to see everything before you sign, if that's okay with you. Also, you'll never have any labor troubles. That'll cut costs on your pictures to some extent, so when the accountants lump some of that in, disregard those figures.
Do I have to get your okay on anything else? Scripts, stars, any of that?
Hagen shook his head.
No, it may happen that the Don would object to something, but he'll object to you direct if he does. But I can't imagine what that would be. Movies don't affect him at all in any way, so he has no interest. And he doesn't believe in meddling. That I can tell you from experience.
Good. I'll drive you to the airport myself. And thank the Godfather for me. I'd call him up and thank him, but he never comes to the phone. Why is that, by the way?
Hagen shrugged.
He hardly ever talks on the phone. He doesn't want his voice recorded, even saying something perfectly innocent. He's afraid that they can splice the words together so that it sounds as if he says something else. I think that's what it is. Anyway, his only worry is that someday he'll be framed by the authorities, so he doesn't want to give them an edge.
They got into Johnny's car and drove to the airport. Hagen was thinking that Johnny was a better guy than he figured. He'd already learned something. Just his driving him personally to the airport proved that. The personal courtesy, something that Don himself always believed in. And the apology. That had been sincere. He had known Johnny a long time, and he knew the apology would never be made out of fear. Johnny had always had guts. That's why he had always been in trouble. With his movie bosses and with his women. He was also one of the few people who was not afraid of the Don. Fontaine and Michael were maybe the only two men Hagen knew of whom this could be said. So the apology was sincere. He would accept it as such. He and Johnny would have to see a lot of each other in the next few years, and Johnny would have to pass the next test, which would prove how smart he was. He would have to do something for the Don that the Don would never ask him to do or insist that he do as part of the agreement. Hagen wondered if Johnny Fontaine was smart enough to figure out that part of the bargain. After Johnny dropped Hagen off at the airport, Hagen insisted that Johnny not hang around for his plane with him. He drove back to Jenny's house. She was surprised to see him. But he wanted to stay at her place so that he would have time to think things out, to make his plans. He knew that what Hagen had told him was extremely important, that his whole life was being changed. He had once been a big star, but now, at the young age of 35, he was washed up. He didn't kid himself about that. Even if he won the award as Best Actor, what the hell could it mean at the most? Nothing if his voice didn't come back. He'd be just second-rate, with no real power, no real juice. Even that girl turning him down. She had been nice and smart and acting sort of hip, but would she have been so cool if he had really been at the top? Now, with the Don backing him with dough, he could be as big as anybody in Hollywood. He could be a king. Johnny smiled. Hell, he could even be a Don. It would be nice living with Jenny again for a few weeks, maybe longer. He'd take the kids out every day, maybe have a few friends over. He'd stop drinking and smoking, really take care of himself. Maybe his voice would get strong again. If that happened, and with the Don's money, he'd be unbeatable. He'd really be as close to an old-time king or emperor as it was possible to be in America. And it wouldn't depend on his voice holding up or how long the public cared about him as an actor. It would be an empire rooted in money and the most special, the most coveted kind of power. Jenny had the guest bedroom made up for him. It was understood that he would not share her room, that they would not live as man and wife. They could never have that relationship again. And though the outside world of gossip columnists and movie fans gave the blame for the failure of their marriage solely to him, yet in a curious way, between the two of them, they both knew that she was even more to blame for their divorce. When Johnny Fontaine became the most popular singer and movie musical comedy star in motion pictures, it had never occurred to him to desert his wife and children. He was too Italian, still too old style. Naturally, he had been unfaithful. That had been impossible to avoid in his business and the temptations to which he was continually exposed. And despite being a skinny, delicate-looking guy, he had the wiry horniness of many small-boned Latin types. And women delighted him in their surprises. He loved going out with a demure, sweet-faced, virginal-looking girl, and then uncapping her breasts to find them so unexpectedly slopingly full and rich, lewdly heavy, in contrast to the cameo face. He loved to find sexual shyness and timidity in the sexy-looking girls, who were all fake motion like a shifty basketball player, vamping as if they had slept with 100 guys, and then, when he got them alone, having to battle for hours to get in and do the job, and finding out they were virgins. And all these Hollywood guys laughed at his fondness for virgins. They called it an old guinea taste, square. And look how long it took to make a virgin give you a blowjob with all the aggravation, and then they usually turned out to be a lousy piece of ass. But Johnny knew that it was how you handled a young girl. You had to come on to her the right way, and then what could be greater than a girl who was tasting her first dick and loving it? Ah, it was so great breaking them in. It was so great having them wrap their legs around you. Their thighs were all different shapes. Their asses were different. Their skins were all different colors and shades of white and brown and tan. And when he had slept with that young colored girl in Detroit, a good girl, not a hustler, the young daughter of a jazz singer on the same nightclub bill with him, she had been one of the sweetest things he had ever had. Her lips had really tasted like warm honey with pepper mixed in it. Her dark brown skin was rich, creamy, and she had been as sweet as God had ever made any woman, and she had been a virgin. And the other guys were always talking about blowjobs this and other variations, and he didn't really enjoy that stuff so much. He never liked a girl that much after they tried it that way. It just didn't satisfy him right. He and his second wife had finally not got along because she preferred the old 69 too much, to a point where she didn't want anything else, and he had to fight to stick it in. She began making fun of him and calling him a square, and the word got around that he made love like a kid. Maybe that was why that girl last night had turned him down. Well, the hell with it. She wouldn't be too great in the sack anyway. You could tell a girl who really liked to fuck, and they were always the best, especially the ones who hadn't been at it too long. What he really hated were the ones who had started screwing at 12 and were all fucked out by the time they were 20 and just going through the motions, and some of them were the prettiest of all and could fake you out. Jenny brought coffee and cake into his bedroom and put it on the long table in the sitting room part. He told her simply that Hagen was helping him put together the money credit for a producing package, and she was excited about that. He would be important again. But she had no idea of how powerful Don Corleone really was, so she didn't understand the significance of Hagen coming from New York. He told her Hagen was also helping with legal details. When they had finished the coffee, he told her he was going to work that night and make phone calls and plans for the future. He told her,
"Half of all this will be in the kids' names."
She gave him a grateful smile and kissed him good night before she left his room. There was a glass dish full of his favorite monogrammed cigarettes, a humidor with pencil-thin black Cuban cigars on his writing desk. Johnny tilted back and started making calls. His brain was really whirring along. He called the author of the book, the best-selling novel, on which his new film was based. The author was a guy his own age who had come up the hard way and was now a celebrity in the literary world. He had come out to Hollywood expecting to be treated like a wheel, and, like most authors, had been treated like shit. Johnny had seen the humiliation of the author one night at the Brown Derby. The writer had been fixed up with a well-known bosomy starlet for a date on the town and a sure shack-up later. But while they were at dinner, the starlet had deserted the famous author because a ratty-looking movie comic had waggled his finger at her. That had given the writer the right slant on just who was who in the Hollywood pecking order. It didn't matter that his book had made him world famous. A starlet would prefer the crummiest, the rattiest, the phoniest movie wheel. Now, Johnny called the author at his New York home to thank him for the great part he had written in his book for him. He flattered the shit out of the guy. Then, casually, he asked him how he was doing on his next novel and what it was all about. He lit a cigar while the author told him about a especially interesting chapter, and then finally said,
"Gee, I'd like to read it when you're finished. How about sending me a copy? Maybe I can get you a good deal for it, better than you got with Waltz."
The eagerness in the author's voice told him that he had guessed right. Waltz had chiseled the guy, given him peanuts for the book. Johnny mentioned that he might be in New York right after the holidays, and would the author want to come and have dinner with some of his friends?
"I know a few good-looking broads."
The author laughed and said, okay. Next, Johnny called up the director and cameraman on the film he had just finished to thank them for having helped him in the film. He told them confidentially that he knew Waltz had been against him and he doubly appreciated their help, and that if there was ever anything he could do for them, they should just call. Then he made the hardest call of all, the one to Jack Waltz. He thanked him for the part in the picture and told him how happy he would be to work for him any time. He did this merely to throw Waltz off the track. He had always been very square, very straight. In a few days, Waltz would find out about his maneuvering and be astounded by the treachery of this call, which was exactly what Johnny Fontane wanted him to feel. After that, he sat at the desk and puffed at his cigar. There was whiskey on a side table, but he had made some sort of promise to himself and Hagen that he wouldn't drink. He shouldn't even be smoking. It was foolish. Whatever was wrong with his voice probably wouldn't be helped by knocking off drinking and smoking. Not too much, but what the hell, it might help, and he wanted all the percentages with him, now that he had a fighting chance. Now, with the house quiet, his divorced wife sleeping, his beloved daughter sleeping, he could think back to that terrible time in his life when he had deserted them. Deserted them for a whore tramp of a bitch who was his second wife. But even now he smiled at the thought of her. She was such a lovely broad in so many ways, and besides, the only thing that saved his life was the day that he had made up his mind never to hate a woman, or, more specifically, the day he had decided he could not afford to hate his first wife and his daughters, his girlfriends, his second wife, and the girlfriends after that, right up to Sharon Moore brushing him off, so that she could brag about refusing to screw for the great Johnny Fontane. He had traveled with the band singing, and then he had become a radio star, and a star of the movie stage shows, and then he had finally made it in the movies. And in all that time he had lived the way he wanted to, screwed the women he wanted to, but he had never let it affect his personal life. Then he had fallen for his soon-to-be second wife, Margot Ashton. He had gone absolutely crazy for her. His career had gone to hell. His voice had gone to hell. His family life had gone to hell. And there had come the day when he was left without anything. The thing was, he had always been generous and fair. He had given his first wife everything he owned when he divorced her. He had made sure his two daughters would get a piece of everything he made, every record, every movie, every club date. And when he had been rich and famous, he had refused his first wife nothing. He had helped out all her brothers and sisters, her father and mother, the girlfriends she had gone to school with, and their families. He had never been a stuck-up celebrity. He had sung at the weddings of his wife's two younger sisters, something he hated to do. He had never refused her anything except the complete surrender of his own personality. And then, when he had touched bottom, when he could no longer get movie work, when he could no longer sing, when his second wife had betrayed him, he had gone to spend a few days with Ginny and his daughters. He had more or less flung himself on her mercy one night because he felt so lousy. That day, he had heard one of his recordings, and he had sounded so terrible that he accused the sound technicians of sabotaging the record. Until finally, he had become convinced that that was what his voice really sounded like. He had smashed the master record and refused to sing any more. He was so ashamed that he had not sung a note except with Nino at Connie Corleone's wedding. He had never forgotten the look on Ginny's face when she found out about all his misfortunes. It had passed over her face only for a second, but that was enough for him never to forget it. It was a look of savage and joyful satisfaction. It was a look that could only make him believe that she had contemptuously hated him all these years. She quickly recovered and offered him cool but polite sympathy. He had pretended to accept it. During the next few days, he had gone to see 3 of the girls he had liked the most over the years, girls he had remained friends with and sometimes still slept with in a comradely way, girls he had done everything in his power to help, girls to whom he had given the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of dollars in gifts or job opportunities. On their faces, he had caught that same fleeting look of savage satisfaction. It was during that time that he knew he had to make a decision. He could become like a great many other men in Hollywood, successful producers, writers, directors, actors, who preyed on beautiful women with lustful hatred. He could use power and monetary favors grudgingly, always alert for treason, always believing that women would betray and desert him, adversaries to be bested. Or he could refuse to hate women and continue to believe in them. He knew he could not afford not to love them, that something of his spirit would die if he did not continue to love women no matter how treacherous and unfaithful they were. It didn't matter that the women he loved most in the world were secretly glad to see him crushed, humiliated by a wayward fortune. It did not matter that in the most awful way, not sexually, they had been unfaithful to him. He had no choice. He had to accept them. And so he made love to all of them, gave them presents, hid the hurt their enjoyment of his misfortunes gave him. He forgave them, knowing he was being paid back for having lived in the utmost freedom from women and in the fullest flush of their flavor. But now, he never felt guilty about being untrue to them. He never felt guilty about how he treated Jenny, insisting on remaining the sole father of his children, yet never even considering remarrying her, and letting her know that, too. That was one thing he had salvaged out of his fall from the top. He had grown a thick skin about the hurts he gave women. He was tired and ready for bed, but one note of memory stuck with him. singing with Nino Valente, and suddenly he knew what would please Don Corleone more than anything else. He picked up the phone and told the operator to get him New York. He called Sonny Corleone and asked him for Nino Valente's number. Then he called Nino. Nino sounded a little drunk, as usual.
Hey, Nino, how'd you like to come out here and work for me? I need a guy I can trust.
Nino, kidding around, said,
Gee, I don't know, Johnny. I got a good job on the truck. Buffing housewives along my route, picking up a clear 150 every week. What you got to offer?
I can start you at 500 and get you blind dates with movie stars. How's that? And maybe I'll let you sing at my parties.
Yeah, okay, let me think about it. Let me talk it over with my lawyer and my accountant and my helper on the truck.
Hey, no kidding around, Nino. I need you out here. I want you to fly out tomorrow morning and sign a personal contract for $500 a week for a year. Then if you steal one of my broads and I fire you, you pick up at least a year's salary, okay?
There was a long pause. Nino's voice was sober.
Hey, Johnny, you kidding?
I'm serious, kid. Go to my agent's office in New York. They'll have your plane ticket and some cash. I'm going to call them first thing in the morning. So you go up there in the afternoon, okay? Then I'll have somebody meet you at the plane and bring you out to the house.
Again, there was a long pause. And then Nino's voice, very subdued, uncertain, said,
Okay, Johnny.
He didn't sound drunk anymore. Johnny hung up the phone and got ready for bed. He felt better than any time since he had smashed that master record. Chapter 13. Johnny Fontaine sat in the huge recording studio and figured costs on a yellow pad. Musicians were filing in, all of them friends he had known since he was a kid singer with the bands. The conductor, top man in the business of pop accompaniment, and a man who had been kind to him when things went sour, was giving each musician bundles of music and verbal instructions. His name was Eddie Niels. He had taken on this recording as a favor to Johnny, though his schedule was crowded. Nino Valente was sitting at a piano, fooling around nervously with the keys. He was also sipping from a huge glass of rye. Johnny didn't mind that. He knew Nino sang just as well drunk as sober, and what they were doing today wouldn't require any real musicianship on Nino's part. Eddie Niels had made special arrangements of some old Italian and Sicilian songs, and a special job on the duet song that Nino and Johnny had sung at Connie Corleone's wedding. Johnny was making the record primarily because he knew that the Don loved such songs, and it would be a perfect Christmas gift for him. He also had a hunch that the record would sell in the high numbers, not 1 million, of course. And he had figured out that helping Nino was how the Don wanted his payoff. Nino was, after all, another one of the Don's godchildren. Johnny put his clipboard and yellow pad on the folding chair beside him and got up to stand beside the piano.
Hey, paisan!
Nino glanced up and tried to smile. He looked a little sick. Johnny leaned over and rubbed his shoulder blades.
Relax, kid. Do a good job today, and I'll fix you up with the best and most famous piece of ass in Hollywood.
Nino took a gulp of whiskey.
Who's that, Lassie?
Johnny laughed.
No, Deanna Dunn. I guarantee the goods.
Nino was impressed, but couldn't help saying, with pseudo-hopefulness,
You can't get Lassie?
The orchestra swung into the opening song of the medley. Johnny Fontaine listened intently. Eddie Niels would play all the songs through in their special arrangements. Then would come the first take for the record. As Johnny listened, he made mental notes on exactly how he would handle each phrase, how he would come into each song. He knew his voice wouldn't last long, but Nino would be doing most of the singing. Johnny would be singing under him, except, of course, in the dual song. He would have to save himself for that. He pulled Nino to his feet, and they both stood by their microphones. Nino flubbed the opening. Flubbed it again. His face was beginning to get red with embarrassment. Johnny kidded him.
Hey, you stalling for overtime?
I don't feel natural without my mandolin.
Johnny thought about that for a moment.
Hold that glass of booze in your hand.
It seemed to do the trick. Nino kept drinking from the glass as he sang, but he was doing fine. Johnny sang easily, not straining, his voice merely dancing around Nino's main melody. There was no emotional satisfaction in this kind of singing, but he was amazed at his own technical skill. 10 years of vocalizing had taught him something. When they came to the dual song that ended the record, Johnny let his voice go, and when they finished, his vocal cords ached. The musicians had been carried away by the last song, a rare thing for these calloused veterans. They hammered down their instruments and stamped their feet in approval, as applause. The drummer gave them a ruffle of drums. With stops and conferences, they worked nearly 4 hours before they quit. Eddie Niels came over to Johnny.
You sounded pretty good, kid. Maybe you're ready to do a record. I have a new song that's perfect for you.
Johnny shook his head.
Come on, Eddie, don't kid me. Besides, in a couple of hours, I'll be too hoarse to even talk. Do you think we'll have to fix up much of the stuff we did today?
Nino will have to come into the studio tomorrow. He made some mistakes, but he's much better than I thought he would be. As for your stuff, I'll have the sound engineers fix anything I don't like, okay?
Okay. When can I hear the pressing?
Tomorrow night. Your place?
Yeah. Thanks, Eddie. See you tomorrow.
He took Nino by the arm and walked out of the studio. They went to his house instead of Ginny's. By this time, it was late afternoon. Nino was still more than half drunk. Johnny told him to get under the shower and then take a snooze. They had to be at a big party at 11 that night. When Nino woke up, Johnny briefed him.
This party is a movie star Lonely Hearts Club. These broads tonight are dames you've seen in the movies as glamour queens millions of guys would give their right arms to screw. And the only reason they'll be at the party tonight is to find somebody to shack them up. Do you know why? Because they are hungry for it. They are just a little old. And just like every dame, they want it with a little bit of class.
What's the matter with your voice?
Every time after I sing a little bit, that happens. I won't be able to sing for a month now, but I'll get over the hoarseness in a couple of days.
Tough, huh?
Listen, Nino, don't get too drunk tonight. You have to show these Hollywood broads that my paisan buddy ain't weak in the poop. You gotta come across. Remember, some of these dames are very powerful in movies. They can get you work. It doesn't hurt to be charming after you knock off a piece.
Nino was already pouring himself a drink.
I'm always charming.
He drained the glass. Grinning, he asked,
No kidding. Can you really get me close to Deanna Dunn?
Don't be so anxious. It's not going to be like you think.
The Hollywood movie star Lonely Hearts Club, so-called by the young juvenile leads whose attendance was mandatory, met every Friday night at the palatial studio-owned home of Roy McElroy, press agent, or rather public relations counsel, for the Waltz International Film Corporation. Actually, it was McElroy's open house party. The idea had come from the practical brain of Jack Waltz himself. Some of his money-making movie stars were getting older now. Without the help of special lights and genius makeup men, they looked their age. They were having problems. They had also become, to some extent, desensitized physically and mentally. They could no longer fall in love. They could no longer assume the role of hunted women. They had been made too imperious by money, by fame, by their former beauty. Waltz gave his parties so that it would be easier for them to pick up lovers, one-night stands, who, if they had the stuff, could graduate into full-time bed partners and so work their way upward. Since the action sometimes degenerated into brawls or sexual excess that led to trouble with the police, Waltz decided to hold the parties in the house of the public relations counselor, who would be right there to fix things up, pay off newsmen and police officers, and keep everything quiet. For certain virile young male actors on the studio payroll, who had not yet achieved stardom or featured roles, attendance at the Friday night parties was a not always pleasant duty. This was explained by the fact that a new film yet to be released by the studio would be shown at the party. In fact, that was the excuse for the party itself. People would say, "Let's go over and see what the new picture so-and-so made is like." And so it was put in a professional context. Young female starlets were forbidden to attend the Friday night parties, or rather, discouraged. Most of them took the hint. Screenings of the new movies took place at midnight, and Johnny and Nino arrived at 11. Roy McElroy proved to be, at first sight, an enormously likable man, well-groomed, beautifully dressed. He greeted Johnny Fontaine with a surprised cry of delight.
"What the hell are you doing here?"
he said with genuine astonishment. Johnny shook his hand.
I'm showing my country cousin the sights. Meet Nino.
McElroy shook hands with Nino and gazed at him appraisingly.
"They'll eat 'em up alive."
He led them to the rear patio. The rear patio was really a series of huge rooms whose glass doors had been opened to a garden and pool. There were almost 100 people milling around, all with drinks in their hands. The patio lighting was artfully arranged to flatter feminine faces and skin. These were women Nino had seen on the darkened movie screens when he had been a teenager. They had played their part in his erotic dreams of adolescence. But seeing them now in the flesh was like seeing them in some horrible makeup. Nothing could hide the tiredness of their spirit and their flesh. Time had eroded their godhead. They posed and moved as charmingly as he remembered, but they were like wax fruit. They could not lubricate his glands. Nino took 2 drinks, wandered to a table where he could stand next to a nest of bottles. Johnny moved with him. They drank together until behind them came the magic voice of Deanna Dunn. Nino, like millions of other men, had that voice imprinted on his brain forever. Deanna Dunn had won 2 Academy Awards, had been in the biggest movie grosser made in Hollywood. On the screen, she had a feline feminine charm that made her irresistible to all men. But the words she was saying had never been heard on the silver screen.
Johnny, you bastard! I had to go to my psychiatrist again because you gave me a one-night stand. How come you never came back for seconds?
Johnny kissed her on her proffered cheek.
You wore me out for a month. I want you to meet my cousin Nino, a nice, strong Italian boy. Maybe he can keep up with you.
Deanna Dunn turned to give Nino a cool look.
Does he like to watch previews?
Johnny laughed.
I don't think he's ever had the chance. Why don't you break him in?
Nino had to take a big drink when he was alone with Deanna Dunn. He was trying to be nonchalant, but it was hard. Deanna Dunn had the upturned nose, the clean-cut classical features of the Anglo-Saxon beauty. And he knew her so well. He had seen her alone in a bedroom, heartbroken, weeping over her dead flyer husband, who had left her with fatherless children. He had seen her angry, hurt, humiliated, yet with a shining dignity when a caddish Clark Gable had taken advantage of her, then left her for a sexpot. Deanna Dunn never played sexpots in the movies. He had seen her flushed with requited love, writhing in the embrace of the man she adored, and he had seen her die beautifully, at least a half-dozen times. He had seen her and heard her and dreamed about her, and yet he was not prepared for the first thing she said to him alone.
Johnny is one of the few men with balls in this town. The rest are all fags and sick morons who couldn't get it up with a broad if you pumped a truckload of Spanish fly into their scrotums.
She took Nino by the hand and led him into a corner of the room, out of traffic and out of competition. Then, still coolly charming, she asked him about himself. He saw through her. He saw that she was playing the role of the rich society girl who was being kind to the stable boy or the chauffeur, but who in the movie would either discourage his amatory interest if the part were played by Spencer Tracy, or throw up everything in her mad desire for him if the part were played by Clark Gable. But it didn't matter. He found himself telling her about how he and Johnny had grown up together in New York, about how he and Johnny had sung together on little club dates. He found her marvelously sympathetic and interested. Once she asked casually,
Do you know how Johnny made that bastard Jack Waltz give him the part?
Nino froze and shook his head. She didn't pursue it. The time had come to see the preview of a new waltz movie. Deanna Dunn led Nino, her warm hand imprisoning his, to an interior room of the mansion that had no windows, but was furnished with about 50 small two-person couches scattered around in such a way as to give each one a little island of semi-privacy. Nino saw there was a small table beside the couch, and on the table were an ice bowl, glasses, and bottles of liquor, plus a tray of cigarettes. He gave Deanna Dunn a cigarette, lit it, and then mixed them both drinks. They didn't speak to each other. After a few minutes, the lights went out. He had been expecting something outrageous. After all, he'd heard the legends of Hollywood depravity, but he was not quite prepared for Deanna Dunn's voracious plummet on his sexual organ without even a courteous and friendly word of preparation. He kept sipping his drink and watching the movie, but not tasting, not seeing. He was excited in a way he had never been before, but part of it was because this woman servicing him in the dark had been the object of his adolescent dreams. Yet in a way, his masculinity was insulted. So when the world-famous Deanna Dunn was sated and had tidied him up, he very coolly fixed her a fresh drink in the darkness and lit her a fresh cigarette, and said in the most relaxed voice imaginable,
This looks like a pretty good movie.
He felt her stiffen beside him on the couch. Could it be she was waiting for some sort of compliment? Nino poured his glass full from the nearest bottle his hand touched in the darkness. The hell with that. She treated him like a goddamn male whore. For some reason now, he felt a cold anger at all these women. They watched the picture for another 15 minutes. He leaned away from her so their bodies did not touch. Finally, she said in a low, harsh whisper,
Don't be such a snotty punk. You liked it. You were as big as a house.
Nino sipped his drink and said in his natural, offhand manner,
That's the way it always is. You should see it when I get excited.
She laughed a little and kept quiet for the rest of the picture. Finally, it was over and the lights went on. Nino took a look around. He could see there had been a ball here in the darkness, though oddly enough he hadn't heard a thing. But some of the dames had that hard, shiny, bright-eyed look of women who have just been worked over real good. They sauntered out of the projection room. Deanna Dunn left him immediately to go over and talk to an older man Nino recognized as a famous featured player. Only now, seeing the guy in person, he realized that he was a fag. He sipped his drink thoughtfully. Johnny Fontaine came up beside him.
Hi, old buddy. Having a good time?
Nino grinned.
I don't know. It's different. Now, when I go back to the old neighborhood, I can say Deanna Dunn had me.
Johnny laughed.
She can be better than that if she invites you home with her. Did she?
Nino shook his head.
I got too interested in the movie.
But this time, Johnny didn't laugh.
Get serious, kid. A dame like that can do you a lot of good. And you used to boff anything. Man, sometimes I still get nightmares when I remember those ugly broads you used to bang.
Nino waved his glass drunkenly.
Yeah, they were ugly, but they were women.
Deanna Dunn, in the corner, turned her head to look at them. Nino waved his glass at her in greeting. Johnny Fontaine sighed.
Okay, you're just a guinea peasant.
Yeah, and I ain't gonna change,
Nino said with his charmingly drunken smile. Johnny understood him perfectly. He knew Nino was not as drunk as he pretended. He knew that Nino was only pretending so that he could say things which he felt were too rude to say to his new Hollywood padrone when sober. He put his arm around Nino's neck and said affectionately,
You wise guy, bum. You know you got an ironclad contract for a year and you can say and do anything you want and I can't fire you.
You can't fire me?
No.
Then fuck you.
For a moment, Johnny was surprised into anger. He saw the careless grin on Nino's face. But in the past few years, he must have gotten smarter, or his own descent from stardom had made him more sensitive. In that moment, he understood Nino, why his boyhood singing partner had never become successful, why he was trying to destroy any chance of success now. That Nino was reacting away from all the prices of success, that in some way he felt insulted by everything that was being done for him. Johnny took Nino by the arm and led him out of the house. Nino could barely walk now. Johnny was talking to him soothingly.
Okay, kid, you just sing for me. I want to make dough on you. I won't try to run your life. You do whatever you want to do, okay, paisan? All you got to do is sing for me and earn me money now that I can't sing anymore. You got that, old buddy?
Nino straightened up.
I'll sing for you, Johnny. I'm a better singer than you now. I was always a better singer than you. You know that?
Johnny stood there thinking, so that was it. He knew that when his voice was healthy, Nino simply wasn't in the same league with him. Never had been in those years they had sung together as kids. He saw Nino was waiting for an answer, weaving drunkenly in the California moonlight.
Fuck you.
And they both laughed together like the old days, when they had both been equally young. When Johnny Fontaine got word about the shooting of Don Corleone, he not only worried about his godfather, but also wondered whether the financing for his movie was still alive. He had wanted to go to New York to pay his respects to his godfather in the hospital, but he had been told not to get any bad publicity. That was the last thing Don Corleone would want. So he waited. A week later, a messenger came from Tom Hagen. Financing was still on, but for only one picture at a time. Meanwhile, Johnny let Nino go his own way in Hollywood and California, and Nino was doing all right with the young starlets. Sometimes Johnny called him up for a night out together, but never leaned on him. When they talked about the Don getting shot, Nino said to Johnny,
You know, once I asked the Don for a job in his organization, he wouldn't give it to me. I was tired of driving a truck and I wanted to make a lot of dough. You know what he told me? He says every man has only one destiny, and that my destiny was to be an artist, meaning that I couldn't be a racket guy.
Johnny thought that one over. The Godfather must be just about the smartest guy in the world. He'd known immediately that Nino could never make a racket guy, would only get himself in trouble or get killed. Get killed with just one of his wisecracks. But how did the Don know that he would be an artist? Because, God damn it, he figured that someday I'd help Nino. And how did he figure that? Because he would drop the word to me, and I would try to show my gratitude. Of course, he never asked me to do it. He just let me know it would make him happy if I did it. Johnny Fontaine sighed. Now the Godfather was hurt, in trouble, and he could kiss the Academy Award goodbye with Woltz working against him and no help on his side. Only the Don had the personal contacts that could apply pressure, and the Corleone family had other things to think about. Johnny had offered to help. Hagen had given him a curt no. Johnny was busy getting his own picture going. The author of the book he had starred in had finished his new novel and came west on Johnny's invitation to talk it over without agents or studios getting into the act.